So I am getting a lot of questions about, do I have to do the scouting.org worksheet for this class? The answer to that is no. If you attend all 3 sessions, we feel that, you've gotten pretty good understanding. There will be a Google form that I will send out after the 3rd session, which was the plane time session. There'll be a few questions. It'll reference this class, and it'll reference the next class, and it'll have some references to what Ben Coleman talks about on the 23rd. So if you answer those questions, then I will start processing your merit badge. There'll also be a couple other questions in there as well, basically things to help me fill out that blue card for you. They will be electronic blue cards, so they will be emailed to you. If you've connected through Scoutbook, it'll go through Scoutbook. So you guys can ask me those questions directly.
Okay, can you see the poll now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so hopefully they will answer this. Wow, yeah, they're boy, they are answering it. Evidently, they're more used to polls than they are to the yes, no to the participant screen.
Yeah, kind of hard to miss the poll.
I'm doing this on my phone, so I don't have that. I can't answer the questions.
Not a problem. We're just learning as we go also, so we're just testing some procedures out here. And looks like we usually allow about 30 seconds for this, but I'm going to go a little bit more with this one out there just to give, because we've got a few more people than what we normally work with. We got 71% of it right now that have answered the question. And are you working on an aviation merit badge now? This is sort of interesting. And we will share the results. And 85% or 47 are currently working on it right now, Alta, if they don't already have it. So that would be the next question. Do you currently have it or something, But
yeah, I think most people on the call want to get it. So
sure.
This is their first chance at it.
People were asking that if we just started the merit badge with this session, do we click yes or no?
If you just started, that would have been yes. If you're currently working on it, that means like right now today, or if you're just going to start it pretty soon, or whatever, Is that right, Altair?
Yes, if you're starting it today. We actually have, I think there might be a couple of people on here that I know that already have the badge.
Sure. And that's fine, because every year when we do this, we try to change it up a little bit. We've done ballooning. We've done, we're trying to do soaring, where you can learn more about sailplanes and that sort of thing. We've done United Airlines. I guess it's United. My mind goes back to Continental out there. That's what originally was there. And then of course we do pre-flight. Years ago, we used to do the Young Eagle flights, which is another activity. It's not a scouting activity because you actually go up and fly in the airplane with an EAA, experimental aircraft member, and you actually control the airplane. And that's all free. If you are interested in that, if you check on the website for EAA chapter in your local area, you might find out that they're doing a Young Eagle program there, so you can learn about it there. Another thing to do to learn about aviation is what'd you call it? X-Plane? Is that what you call it?
X-Plane 11.
X-Plane 11 or Microsoft Flight Simulator. Those are things that will help you make it a lot easier. The airplane or the simulator that Ed was doing there, they can have the gauges on the front, which we call the steam gauges, which are analog type indications, or the electronic indications. Most of the current day airplanes that are being produced now all have what they call glass panels or electronic navigation systems. But you can learn a great deal just by going on YouTube, by going to the X-Planes, or working with the EAA chapter. In fact, here in Orlando, we have a program that's 8 weeks long. It's a half a day each day that they learn about aviation and aviation safety. And on the left at the end there, they take a 4-place airplane up and let each one of the participants fly in the control seat for one leg of the flight.
So I'm seeing a bunch of questions on there. We are, our next guest will be here at 11, possibly a little before that. If you guys would like, you can take a quick break. Our next guest will be from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, their helicopter unit here in Orlando, Florida. And they always, it's one of the favorites the Scouts always look forward to every year. And yes, the scheduled time is actually 12:30. I misspoke earlier to somebody saying 11. But we will wrap up as soon as Officer Sampsel is done.
I think it is 11 o'clock until 12:30 is when that's scheduled.
Yes.
Scott, are you there? Altair, I think he's just signed in.
Oh, cool.
All right, I'm here.
All right.
Oh,
How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
I just wasn't familiar with that part
Yes,
of it.
yes. You can do it either way. You know, I'd just like to let the presenters, you know, have
Sure.
control of it so they have a more of a flow.
Of course, of course.
And you know, like I said at the beginning, you know, we're going to make mistakes, but that's what this is all about.
Sounds good to me.
Altair, I'm
should
going
I
to go
go-
get some. Say again?
Should I go ahead and try it now? Like get the PowerPoint open in the background or something, or?
Hold, you can open it in the background, and then when I share it with you, then you'll be able to do it there. I think. Hold on just a second.
hey, welcome back, everybody. I hope we had a little bit of time to stretch our legs. Obie, would you like to introduce?
Yeah,
our
I'm
next
going to
guest?
try this intro one more time. Okay, let me see here. Can you see that?
Did.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay. Scott is with the Orange County Sheriff Department Aviation Unit. He's worked with us for years doing this program, the Aviation Orientation. Like I said, the first portion of the program, we talked about fixed wing aircraft, and we did a pre-flight, Scott, like we normally do, walking around the aircraft with Ed Kaminsky there. And then he talked a little bit about maintenance, some like that. And now we're going over from another portion of aviation into helicopters and also law enforcement. So Scott, I'm going to allow screen share now with you, and you can click down there where it says screen share, and we'll take it from there.
All right. All right. Can
And
you
with
see?
that-
Is that working, Obie?
Yes, sir.
All right.
You might want to click down at the bottom where it's just a slideshow instead of the whole thing.
How's that?
That's beautiful.
So can you guys still see me too, or just the presentation?
We can see you and
We can see you.
Yes,
Okay, great.
we could.
Well, let me start by saying thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Sampsel, and I am a deputy sheriff with the Orange County Sheriff's Office and one of the pilots over in our aviation section. And I want to thank Obie and the Florida Aviation Network for letting me join you guys this morning for a little bit. This is a little strange because we normally do this in person, and I like to have you guys out to the hangar. And when you guys are all able at some point in the future, please come by and see us at the sheriff's office. If you're over at the if you're over at the Orlando Executive Airport, you're welcome to come by and say hi to us and check out the helicopters and the
Scott?
aircraft. Yes.
Yeah, this is unusual compared. Normally there's the scouts from the local area, but right now we got scouts throughout the United States.
Wow.
We've got
Wow.
Puerto Rico, Pennsylvania, several more out there. You might want to say some of the other locations because I didn't get them all, but they're from all over. Okay, so you've got
That's
a much
great.
larger audience today.
So in that case, whenever you guys come to visit Orlando and come to Disney World, you can
Right.
come by the Orange County Sheriff's Office here in Orlando and visit us. But again, welcome, and I'm glad you guys are all here. So I'll just give you a brief background about myself and the Sheriff's Office Aviation Unit, what we do, and then I'll show you some slides, some pictures of our equipment and our aircraft. Most people don't realize this, but most police departments and sheriff's offices in America do not have an aviation unit. It is not common to have one. So most of them just can't afford it. It's a very expensive proposition to have helicopters and have a helicopter operation. So I'm very fortunate that I work for a sheriff's office that actually has a big aviation unit. And for many, many years, we were probably one of the biggest aviation units in law enforcement in the entire United States. Most aviation units that are in existence have 2 aircraft and about 6 or 7 police officers or deputy sheriffs that fly those aircraft. In our unit, we're down a little bit on our aircraft right now because we retired some military surplus aircraft a few years ago and we didn't replace them. But in our unit, we've had as many as 6 helicopters and 2 airplanes. And that's a pretty large amount of aircraft for a law enforcement aviation unit. We currently have 3 helicopters and 1 airplane, but again, we've had as many as 6 helicopters and 2 airplanes during my tenure at the agency. And one of the things about our unit, our aviation unit, is you are required to be a deputy sheriff or a police officer first. And in case some of you guys don't know the difference, it's a police officer and a deputy sheriff are pretty similar. They both work as law enforcement officers. They just get their power differently from the state versus the city, that type of thing. But police officers and deputy sheriffs are pretty much the same thing. And everybody who works in our aviation unit was a police officer or a deputy sheriff out on the street. So I used to drive a regular police car with lights and sirens and arrest bad guys and do all that kind of stuff. Everybody that's in our unit had to start as a police officer or deputy sheriff first. You have to work for many, many years out on the street before you can come over into our aviation unit. So we all have experience working out on the street. After coming into our aviation unit, we have a couple different positions. We have tactical flight officers, and then we have pilots both. The tactical flight officers are called TFOs. So if you hear me say TFO in the next 30 minutes or so, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tactical flight officer or the co-pilot. I just simply call them co-pilots. But what we do is we have 2 clear roles. When you're a police aviator, you're either the pilot, the person that's responsible for the safe flight of the aircraft, or you're the TFO, the tactical flight officer. And that's in essence the police officer in the aircraft. So you work the camera, the radios, you help the pilot with navigation. The TFO is basically catching the bad guy, whereas the pilot is just focused on flying the aircraft for the most part. Now, I started as a TFO like most of our pilots did. I was a TFO for many, many years before I was promoted to becoming a pilot. So that's sort of how it goes. You get experience as a TFO and then you move into a pilot spot. So We'll go ahead and start the slideshow, and I'll show you some of the equipment that we have and how some things work. The Orange County Sheriff's Office is one of the largest and busiest law enforcement aviation units in the entire United States, and definitely we're one of the largest and busiest in the southeastern United States. We are, as far as I know, things may have changed in the last few years, but as far as I know, we are bigger than Atlanta, Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami. In fact, several of those cities put together. And when I say bigger, I mean we have more equipment, a bigger budget, more pilots, more TFOs. As I mentioned earlier, the average law enforcement aviation unit has 2 aircraft and about 6 full-time personnel. Well, we currently have 4 aircraft and 22 full-time personnel and about another 10 part-time personnel. And our annual budget's over $3 million just for our unit alone. So we're a pretty big operation in our unit. As I mentioned, we currently have 3 helicopters and an airplane. This is a Bell 407. It's considered a medium-sized utility helicopter. So we have 2 of these Bell 407s, and our helicopters all have their own call sign, Chase 1, Chase 2, etc. So that's Chase 2 right there. We have a Bell 206 L4. That's our newest aircraft. We purchased that aircraft about 3.5 years ago. It's Chase 3. And then we've got a fixed wing airplane, as you guys just covered with Ed before our call. That's a Cessna 206 Turbo Stationair. And that airplane is a 2008 model year, I believe. We got that airplane about 12, 13 years ago. So that's our current fleet of aircraft, the 3 helicopters, 2 of the 407s, the 1 L4, and the 206 Turbo. Our call sign is Chase. So when we're out flying around and talking on the police radio, we use the call sign Chase. And we provide assistance and support to every aspect of the sheriff's office. So mostly when we go out on a daily basis, we go out and help the patrol deputies. So the guys and gals that are out driving around in the marked police cars that you see when you're out driving around, or you see them out doing traffic stops or working a crash on the side of the road. Those are the people that we work for the most, the patrol folks. And also the canines. We work with our canine deputies almost every single day. Anytime we're going out to look for a bad guy, there's usually a canine dog there that's also searching for the bad guy. So we work with patrol and canine the most out of everybody, of every section of the sheriff's office. That's the folks we work with the most. However, we pretty much work with just about every single aspect of the sheriff's office. We work with forensics. If there's a shooting or something like that, the forensics folks will want to take aerial photography for when we go to court. We work with SWAT. If they're doing a very high risk search warrant entry, we'll be overhead for the SWAT guys. If our gang unit or our narcotics unit or homicide unit is hunting a bad guy and they need some extra support, some extra help, we will be there to help provide that support. So we work with just about every single division and unit within the sheriff's office. And we're a big sheriff's office too. We have over 1,800 sworn deputy sheriffs here in Orange County. So, but in addition to the sheriff's office, there's about 13 cities in Orange County here in Orlando, in Central Florida, Orlando being the biggest city, but there's about 13 cities. So we also work for every one of those cities. We work for the city of Orlando. We work for the city of Winter Park, the city of Maitland, the city of Winter Garden, the city of Apopka. We provide support to all of those cities. If they need help from the air, we go out and help them. So not only do we work for our own folks, which is a full-time job, we also support all these other agencies. In fact, I flew for the Orlando Police Department several times last night. I just worked a midnight shift all night long. I just got home this morning, a few hours ago. So we're very, very busy. We respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, weather permitting. Now, I know most of you guys have some interest in aviation and you've learned some of the basic stuff. So most of you are probably familiar with there's the 2 types of flying that we're involved in, right? There's VFR flying, which is visual flight rules, and IFR flying, which discusses instrument flight rules. So we are a VFR operation. We only fly when the weather is pretty good. You know, the weather can be getting bad or just starting to clear up after being bad and we can go fly, but we don't like to take a whole lot of chances and a whole lot of risks, because if we go out and we get hurt or You know, something bad happens when we're flying around in bad weather, then we're not helping anybody. In fact, they now have to come help us. So if the weather, we have certain VFR minimums. If the ceilings aren't at least 1,000 feet, if we don't have at least 3 miles of visibility, we're not going to go fly. But other than that, we pretty much respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, I just worked on Christmas Day. I worked on New Year's Eve all night. So holidays, weekends, we do it all. We work all that stuff. Our aviation unit at the Orange County Sheriff's Office is comprised of 10 full-time commercially rated pilots. Every one of our pilots has a commercial rotorcraft rating or helicopter rating, and most of our pilots also have a fixed wing or an airplane rating. Most of us started as airplane pilots and then added on the helicopter ratings later. That's how I did it. We've only currently got 3 of us that fly both the helicopters and the airplane, and I'm one of the pilots that flies both. But we are training some of our other guys to fly our airplane as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about the airplane in a few minutes. We've got our tactical flight officers. We've got 10 full-time tactical flight officers and 9 part-time tactical flight officers. And some of those folks come from the Orlando Police Department. Orlando, because we fly so much for the Orlando Police Department, and the city of Orlando is in Orange County. So because we help them so much, they provide us with 2 full-time people and 3 part-time people. That's sort of how they pay us back for flying so much for them. I estimate that we provide the city of Orlando with somewhere in the ballpark of $300,000 to $400,000 worth of service on an annual basis. So if we were to send them a bill every year for how much we fly for them, it would come close to about $500,000. We fly quite a bit for the city of Orlando. So that picture there on the bottom, if you guys can all see that picture, is the pilot and the TFO. So the pilot is sitting over here on the left side of your view, but in a helicopter, the pilot sits in the right seat, unlike an airplane. In an airplane, your pilot in command sits on the over here on the left side, but in the helicopter, the pilot's over here on the right side, the co-pilot or TFO is on the left side. And if you look up here at their eyes, you can see that they've got their night vision goggles on. So we wear night vision goggles. They attach to our helmet right up here on a little bracket, and they just simply flip up and flip down. We can move them up and down. So that's a great safety enhancement that we have when we're flying at night. It in essence allows you to see in the dark, having those night vision goggles. So we use those not so much to search for bad guys, but for in the event of an off-field landing or some other type of emergency, the pilot will clearly be able to see the ground, identify a landing area, that type of thing. And this is probably a good time to mention auto rotations. I don't know if you guys have seen auto rotations or even know what an auto rotation is, but when we're done today, you might want to spend a few minutes on YouTube and watch a few videos of auto rotations. They're pretty cool. You spell it just like auto, A-U-T-O, and then rotation, R-O-T-A-T-I-O-N. It's one word, auto rotation. If you go on YouTube and put in helicopter auto rotations, you'll get to see some pretty cool videos. And what that means is if the engine were to fail or you ran out of gas or something happened in the helicopter, you can still land the helicopter safely on the ground. There's a thing inside the helicopter transmission called a freewheeling unit. So if the engine stops making power, that freewheeling unit will disengage from the transmission and allow the rotor on top to continue spinning all the way to the ground. So you only have one chance to get it right, but as you fall to the ground, you can keep the rotor spinning at full power, and then right before you get on the ground, you can pull the cyclic back to slow your descent down, and then pull the collective up with your left hand, which loads the blades up, and you can gently set the helicopter down the ground. So the thing is, like I said, you've only got one chance to do it, so you got to do it right. But we practice that twice a year here at the Sheriff's Office. We have some of the best helicopter pilots in the world that work for Bell Helicopter. They come out to the Sheriff's Office and they work with each one of our pilots. And we fly with them for about 2 hours, each pilot. And we practice doing full touchdown auto rotations. So I'm up flying around at 800, 900 feet, and the pilot just rolls the engine off. And I got to land it safely on the ground. We do that about 25, 30 times. And then several other emergency procedure maneuvers as well. But that's some of the training we get at the sheriff's office, and that is how you can safely land a helicopter in the event of an engine failure or loss of power, something like that. And those night vision goggles will assist if that were to happen. You know, heaven forbid that happens at nighttime in the dark. Those goggles will help us get on the ground safely. So that's why I like to highlight those goggles and explain why we use them and what they're all about. We also have our own complete maintenance shop at the sheriff's office. We have 2 hangars, and our maintenance hangar is a pretty big operation. There's a picture of it there in the bottom left. We have 4 full-time avionics and aviation maintenance technicians that work here at the sheriff's office. We have a maintenance director and then 3 technicians, and those guys keep us safe. They keep us alive and keep us flying while we're out doing our job. They do all the work on the helicopters pretty much in-house. The only thing that we really don't do at the sheriff's office is engine overhauls. We just sent an engine out recently to be overhauled. And that's pretty common. Most shops don't do engine overhauls. The engines will go back to the manufacturers, generally speaking, to be overhauled. These helicopters all have jet turbine engines in them. They have Rolls-Royce Allison engines. The 407 has a C-47, a bigger engine, and the 206 has a little bit smaller engine. That Bell 407 engine makes quite a bit of horsepower. I don't have the book in front of me, but it's upwards of 800 shaft horsepower. So they're pretty powerful. That Bell 407 has a top cruise speed of around 150 to 160 knots. So, you know, upwards of 150 or 60 miles per hour. If the conditions are right. We don't generally go that fast. We're generally down around 100 to 120 knots, I would say. But we do have that power and capability available just in case if we need it. But our mechanics do all the work in-house on these helicopters. They wire in all of our computers and cameras and lights and recorders. We have all kinds of equipment. We'll go over that a little bit more in depth in just a minute as well. But every 50 hours, every 50 hours, there's some type of maintenance being done on these helicopters, whether it's an oil change or a hot section flush, or there's all types of maintenance that's being done. These helicopters are very, very expensive because they're very, very maintenance intensive. And while we're talking about expense, the Bell 407 that I showed you guys a few minutes ago, right now today, a police outfitted Bell 407 is a little over $6 million. So if you want to go buy one of these helicopters, you can buy a used one for a much more reasonable amount, $2 to $3 million. But to buy a brand new Bell 407, put it in service as a police helicopter, add on the cameras, the lights, the computers, all this special avionics and equipment we use, you're up in the $6 million price range. Also, because a lot of times folks ask about the fuel burn. The helicopters burn, that helicopter, that Bell 407 burns about 50 gallons of fuel per hour. So we carry about 125 gallons. So we've got about 2.5 hours of flight time. Every time we go up, we can stay airborne for about 2.5 hours. Our aviation unit is the only law enforcement aviation unit in Orange County, Florida, that responds to calls for service. We're based at the Orlando Executive Airport, which is 3 miles east of downtown Orlando. So again, if you're ever in Orlando, we're just east of downtown, you can come see us and come visit us. And we work shifts. We work 12-hour shifts. So we have a day shift, an afternoon shift, and a midnight shift. I worked all night last night, and I'll be back working all night again tonight. We not only support our own personnel, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, but we support many local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, to include the Orlando Police Department. We work for our fire rescue folks. We assist with bad car crashes during our dry months here in the spring, which are coming up. We have a lot of wildfires, so we do a lot of wildland fire support. We work with the Florida Highway Patrol, the troopers out on the highways. We work with our federal partners too. We work with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We work with the Secret Service. We work with the Drug Enforcement Administration. Anytime the president comes to Orlando, we fly that call. We fly the Secret Service. We've met several of the presidents, but when the Air Force One comes in and lands here at the Orlando International Airport, I actually fly the helicopter down the runway and sweep the runway before Air Force One lands. And then the entire time the president's in the limo on the ground, we're flying overhead, and we've got a Secret Service agent in the helicopter with us, and he or she is talking to the agents that are in the presidential motorcade. And so we're directly responsible for being involved with the safety and security of the president, the vice president, other dignitaries, the governor, the mayor, that type of thing. So we do a lot of those VIP type transports and protection details as well. Our aviation unit flies many different types of calls every single day. And here's a listing of some of the most common things that we do every day. So vehicle pursuits are common. We fly vehicle pursuits. Foot pursuits, when bad guys run from the deputies or the police, we go out to help search for them. We do a lot of missing person searches. Here in Florida, we got a lot of older folks, a lot of grandmas and grandpas, and some of them, it's kind of easy for them to go out and get lost. They get confused. So we go out and search for older folks as well. We do the fire missions, fire reconnaissance missions, photo missions. We go out and do patrols sometimes. If we're having a lot of problems, like with, let's say, stolen cars in a certain part of town, we'll go out and just focus on catching those bad guys who are stealing cars. You'll see right here about the middle, you'll see microwave downlink missions. So we've got a microwave digital downlink set up on all of our helicopters. We can go out, and whatever we're flying, we can broadcast back to a computer or to a receiver, so other folks can see what we're doing. So if someone could be sitting in their office watching us go out and fly a mission and get some valuable intelligence about something, like if SWAT's about to do a search warrant, we might go out and fly it so they can see the backyard or see what the compound looks like, that type of thing. Crime suspect searches. So anytime someone commits typically felony crimes or violent felony crimes, we go out and hunt for those folks and work with our canines and our patrol people on the ground or our SWAT team to get them. Even silly things like code enforcement. Sometimes code enforcement here in Orange County needs to see what's going on, maybe at a landfill or a dump, and they don't want to try and go out and walk around, or they can't get permission. We can fly over and take a look. Disaster missions. After the hurricanes, we'll go out and fly and see what roads are open, what power lines are down, what trees are blocking roads, things like that. We fly homeland security missions and patrols. We search for stolen vehicles every single day. We flew for stolen vehicles last night. We do a lot of trainings, public relations events like what we're doing right now. We do quite a bit of this stuff. And helicopters are utilized for the majority of our operation. However, the fixed wing airplane does fill an important role as a long range standoff covert aircraft. So about 90 to 95% of the missions we fly are the helicopters used for those missions, because the helicopter gives us a lot of flexibility. We can hover, we can slow down, we can get down low and really search for bad guys. The airplane, as most of you guys know, can only slow down to a certain speed, and then it's going to stall, right? So we don't mean the engine's going to stall. We mean it's going to lose the capability to create lift, and the wing is going to stall, and the airplane's going to fall out of the sky. So we don't have that problem with the helicopter, because the wing on the helicopter is overhead and the wing is constantly spinning. So the wing maintains lift all the time. But in the airplane, we can only slow it down to about maybe, 70 knots or so, 65, 70 knots. And that's with putting out the flaps. And if a bad guy's on foot running and I'm trying to slow down in the airplane to follow him, it gets really, really challenging to do that. So we use the helicopter for most of our law enforcement operations. But if we're following some bad guys from here to Miami or here to Tampa, which we do, we'll use the airplane oftentimes. And if we're watching bad guys and we don't want them to know that we're there, which happens quite a bit, we can use the airplane for that too, because there's so much flight training going on here in Florida, in states similar to Florida, like Florida, Texas, California. These are some of the heaviest flight training environments in the entire world. People come to Florida from all over the world to learn how to fly. We're very fortunate here that you can fly just about every single day in Florida. In the summertime, we got to deal with some thunderstorms in the afternoon, but you can almost fly 365 days a year here in Florida. There are governments and militaries and airlines from all around the world that send their folks here to Central Florida to learn how to fly. So any given day, you can walk outside and see a small airplane flying around in the sky and you don't think anything of it. When you see a helicopter, especially if you're a bad guy, you're going to think it's the police or the news or something like that. So if we want to be covert or not let the bad guys know we're out there, we'll fly our airplane a lot of times. And we've got a great camera on that airplane. I can be flying the airplane about 4,000 or 5,000 feet up. I can be about a mile away from the bad guy flying a big wide orbit, and we can zoom in and see what they're holding in their hand. And they have no idea we're up there. So that airplane's an incredible tool. It gives us great capability. It's quiet. So we do use the airplane, but our main mission aircraft is the helicopters. That's our main thing. Every flight, every time we go flying, there are 2 deputy sheriffs inside that helicopter. And those deputy sheriffs bring a wide variety of experience. Everybody, like I said, has to be a regular deputy out on the street before they come to our unit. But some of our guys are homicide detectives. Some of our guys work in internal affairs. Some of our guys work in robbery. Some of our guys are SWAT people. We've all got backgrounds in different things. So we have a lot of experience in law enforcement that comes into our unit. And our part-time personnel, our part-time folks, like I said, we mentioned, we've got about 10 part-time personnel. They work all over the sheriff's office or the Orlando Police Department, Marine Patrol, our gang unit. So we have a lot of experience that comes in to fly with us on a daily basis. Our flight crews are all issued specialized equipment. So I wear a flight suit. When I go to work every day, I look like I'm in the Army. A lot of people think I'm an Air Force pilot or something. If they see me, like if I go out to lunch or dinner, they might think I'm in the military because I'm dressed kind of like a military pilot. But and then we wear a vest on top of our flight suit, and the vest has a flotation device, a little tiny. If there's any scuba divers, a little tiny spare air, a little scuba bottle. And there you go. I see a diver out there. And so you know what the spare air tank is, but we carry a little bottle of oxygen in case we happen to go down in a body of water in a lake or a river. It gives us the capability to exit the aircraft. And we train for that. We do underwater escape training. It hasn't quite been every year, but every year or so, every year and a half, we get into a chair and we get flipped upside down in the pool. And we've got to open the door and egress the aircraft. And we simulate that in the dark and the light, all kinds of different ways. And we train for that scenario. But we're all issued specialized equipment. We wear the Nomex flight suit. The Nomex material is a fire retardant material. That material is designed that, heaven forbid, there's a fire in the aircraft. It will keep us safe until we can get on the ground. Now, if you're driving down the road in your car and there's a fire, you can simply pull over and get out of the car and get away from the car. And you can do that pretty quick. In the helicopter, I can't get out pretty quick. I'm stuck in that thing. It's going to be at least about 30 seconds. That's about the fastest I could get on the ground and jump out. So I've never been on fire, but 30 seconds sounds like a long time to be on fire, even if it ever happens. So that Nomex flight gear is designed to keep us safe. And same with it. We wear Nomex gloves and leather boots. We wear a helmet when we're flying, as you saw earlier in the picture, with the night vision goggles. And in our vest that we wear, we have the capability to carry our gun, our firearm, and extra magazines, our radio, police radio, the underwater air supply bottle. Like I said, we've got a PFD, a flotation collar built into our vest, flashlight, handcuffs, all the basic police gear. We don't carry a taser, and we don't carry pepper spray in the aircraft. That would be a bad thing if that pepper spray went off when I was out flying around. I guess if I didn't like my partner, I could maybe tase him if he was giving me a hard time, but I've never done that and I wouldn't do that. So we don't carry a taser or pepper spray in the aircraft. We just don't have much use for them. And the reason we carry the other equipment, though, the firearms and the magazines and the radios, is every once in a while, it doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while, we land the helicopter and get out and help the guys or gals on the ground. We've done it before. Especially if we're in a very remote area. Orange County is growing, and there's not a whole lot of real rural areas left here in Orange County and Orlando, but there are some way out on our east side and way up in our northwest corner. And the north side, actually, we've got some rural areas where it's heavily wooded and places. We actually have landed the helicopter out in the woods, and we've had a bad guy running from us, and the TFO, the co-pilot, can get out of the helicopter and go arrest someone, can go take law enforcement action. I've done that before. I've jumped out of the helicopter and gone and arrested people. Doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened. So that's why we carry all that gear with us when we're flying. I'll show you guys a few pictures of some of the aircraft now and our equipment, the equipment that we carry inside the aircraft to help us do our job. The pilot, as I mentioned, there's two folks in the aircraft, right? A pilot and a co-pilot, or a TFO, tactical flight officer. On the pilot side, the right side of the aircraft, the pilot has the ultimate control and authority of the aircraft. The pilot is responsible for safety of flight. The pilot communicates with the air traffic controllers, looks for other aircraft, and handles all the airspace responsibilities. We do have a very busy airspace here in Orlando. We have one of the busiest airspaces in the entire United States of America. We get 80, 90 million visitors a year come here to Orlando. So we have a very busy airport. And the Orlando International Airport is 7 miles due south of the Orlando Executive Airport, where my office is. So we're flying in and around the International Airport airspace almost every single day. The pilot will assist the TFO with the radios, with tracking vehicles and hunting for suspects. And the main way that I help the TFO is by looking with my eyes, using the night vision goggles, or using the night sun. The night sun's that big, giant, bright spotlight you guys have probably seen on TV or movies with the helicopters flying and in a car chase or something like that. So we have those lights on all of our helicopter. I'll show you a picture of it here in just a second. But that light is called a night sun. And that night sun puts out about 32 to 33 million candle power. It's a pretty bright flashlight. In fact, it gets so hot it would burn you if you stood in front of it and put your hand up right in front of it if it's turned on. The tactical flight officer, the TFO, their primary responsibilities are the following. When we get a call to go assist someone, they have to get all the call information, the suspect description, the vehicle description, etc. When we're flying, the TFO can put the call information, the address into the map. We've got a GPS moving map, just like you guys have on your cell phones, like on Google Maps, or your parents maybe have in the car, have a GPS map program. We have the same thing in the air. So it helps us get to the scene. The TFO will coordinate the law enforcement activities from the air. We will communicate from the aircraft to the patrol units on the ground or whoever we're working with. The TFO will ensure that the perimeter is sufficient for the search area. So oftentimes when we go out to help hunt for a bad guy, we set what's called a perimeter. We basically build a box around a scene. So if we have a bad guy commits a crime right here in the middle, we build a box or a perimeter around that scene. So we can try and trap the bad guy inside that perimeter. And the TFO will help coordinate that perimeter. We will search, the TFO will help with the search and assist, locating persons and suspects. The TFO will coordinate the fire support when our assistance is requested. Everything we do is recorded for evidentiary purposes. So when we're out flying, we're recording everything we film with our camera. And then when we go to court after we catch a bad guy, our video and all that evidence goes to court as well. So we can show the judge and the jury what we did and what happened, what the bad guy was doing. And the TFO can assist the pilot with the safe operation of the aircraft. Not all of our co-pilot or tactical flight officers are pilots, but the ones that are a huge asset. They can really help me if I needed help flying the aircraft. And the ones that are not pilots, we still give them some basic training in flying the helicopter. We teach them how to take off and land and hover the helicopter in the event of an emergency. If something bad were to happen to me, if I were to get shot or have a heart attack or anything like that at all, we want the co-pilot, the TFO, to still be able to get us safely back on the ground. So that's why we provide some training to all of our TFOs. Even if they're not pilots, we teach them the basics so in an emergency they can take over and help out. And unfortunately, about once a year, a police helicopter does experience an emergency like that where the pilot's incapacitated, either a health situation or pilots have been shot in the past. So by bad guys shooting at the helicopter from the ground. So it's important that we do train those people to be able to assist us with that. So here's the actual breakdown of the aircraft. Up here on the nose of the aircraft is the camera. This is a FLIR camera and a day camera. FLIR stands for forward looking infrared, FLIR. And the FLIR is a technology that the United States military developed back in the 1950s. So the FLIR camera has been around for about 70 years now. And the FLIR camera from 30, 40, 50 years ago was not very good. The FLIR camera we have today is incredible. The cameras that we use today are unbelievable. They can find just about anything. They only require 0.6 of a degree of heat to be able to pick up a target. So the way they work is they actually see heat, they see warmth. So they differentiate heat out in the atmosphere. So if all of us, our temperatures are supposed to be 98.6 degrees, right? That's what the doctors tell us. Our normal temperature is 98.6. On a hot summer day here in Orlando, it can be in the 90s. It could be 98 degrees. So if it's 98 degrees outside the ambient air temperature and a person's 98.6, that 0.6 of a degree of separation is all that's needed for that camera to be able to find someone hiding from us. But this time of year, and we're having one of our coldest nights tonight here in Orlando. It's down in the 30s. We don't get a lot of 30s and freezing weather. But when the temperature is cool in the wintertime, like it is tonight, down in the 30s or the 40s, and we've got a huge separation. We've got 50, 60 degrees of separation. That camera works incredible. Anything that's hot, glows, and stands out like a sore thumb. It's amazing how easy it is to find bad guys, people hiding from us with those cameras when it's cool out. But that's the camera up there on the nose of the helicopter. So that FLIR we pretty much use in the nighttime. You can use the FLIR in the daytime when it's cooler out, but it's pretty much used in the nighttime. It's black and white only. It doesn't see in color, so we can't tell the color of something that someone's wearing. But this camera also does work as a color camera. So in the daytime, if we're filming something, it is a full color, high definition camera. So we can film things in the daytime in color or nighttime in FLIR. So right behind that is a landing light. You can see that light there. I'm putting the mouse on that. Moving back a little bit, there's an antenna. You can't really see it, but there's a small black antenna there. That's the microwave downlink antenna. It broadcasts the picture of whatever we're filming back to a downlink receiver. Now that picture is encrypted, so not everybody can see it. But anybody here at the sheriff's office that has one of our digital downlink receivers, they can see that picture. So they can see what we're filming. And then back here on the back, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a large black tube looking device, and that's the night sun. It's about 2 feet long and about probably 18 inches around. That's the night sun. It's a big, heavy box, and it gets really, really hot, like I mentioned. Draws quite a bit of power when it runs, but that's the night sun, the big spotlight back there on the back of the helicopter. So as I mentioned earlier, inside the helicopter, the pilot sits on the right seat of a helicopter. So over here are your primary flight instruments and flight displays and your primary engine instruments. They're all over here on the right side of the helicopter. Over on the left side, there's a monitor here and then a keyboard here that slides out to type addresses and information on while we're flying. Up here on the dashboard is the controller for the camera. It's resting up there. But you'll notice there's 2 sets of controls. So there's a cyclic stick here for the pilot, and there's a cyclic here for the co-pilot. This stick makes the helicopter go left, right, forwards, and backwards. It controls the main rotor mast overhead. So if I push this cyclic stick forward, the helicopter tilts forward and starts to move forward. And conversely, if I pull back on this cyclic stick, the main rotor tilts backwards and the helicopter will start to move backwards. That's how the cyclic works in the helicopter. Over here, there's a long handle, a long lever. It's called the collective. When you pull up on this collective, it changes the pitch of the blades overhead collectively at the same time. That's why they call it a collective. So when you raise up on that collective, the blades overhead get a bigger bite of the air, and it creates power and lift, and it lifts the helicopter straight up in the air. So, or if you tilt the rotor forward using the cyclic and you pull in the power, it'll pull you forward. So that's how the helicopter moves through the air. So there's a collective for the pilot right here. And then you can just see the tip of a collective for the co-pilot over there. And then there's foot pedals. These are called anti-torque pedals. In the airplane, they're called rudder pedals. In a helicopter, they're called anti-torque pedals, because the helicopter rotor blade spinning overhead creates a ton of torque. And most of you guys probably know this. You've heard this in school. You've learned this, that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So that rotor blade on top of the helicopters made here in America, it spins counterclockwise. Over in Europe, most of them spin clockwise. But here in America, the rotor blade spins counterclockwise. Well, the opposite effect of that torque is the body of the helicopter wants to spin clockwise. The rotor's going counter, the body of the helicopter wants to go clockwise. So to offset that rotation, that's why the tail rotor, you guys have probably seen the tail rotor in the back. It's a much smaller rotor and it spins in a vertical plane, not a horizontal plane like the main rotor overhead. Well, these pedals down here for your feet control that tail rotor in the back of the aircraft. So by, much like in an airplane, you can push on that rudder pedal and it'll point the nose left and right. That's what these anti-torque pedals do. They increase or decrease the amount of torque by pressing. So if you want to go right in the helicopter, if you want the nose to point right, you press on the right pedal and that nose will start to turn to the right. So that's what the pedals in the helicopter do. You are in essence using both hands and both feet when you're flying in the helicopter. The airplane is a little bit easier to fly. The airplane is inherently stable. The wing is stable. It wants to create lift. It wants to fly. The helicopter, not so much. If you let go of the controls in the helicopter when you're flying along and you don't have an autopilot, and most helicopters don't have an autopilot, you're going to be upside down and headed to the ground in about 3 seconds. The helicopter just doesn't want to fly straight and level like an airplane does. So that's what the flight controls do in the helicopter. That's the cyclic, the collective, and then the anti-torque pedals. And we've got them on both sides. So on the pilot side on the right, and then over here on the left. So you can fly the helicopter from the right side or the left side, but all the primary instruments are over here on the right side. And I'll show you what those are. The flight displays here have your attitude and heading reference information. So when you're flying along, they show you the ground. There's tapes on the side that show your airspeed, your altitude, all your directional information. Those are all on these main flight displays. All of our flight instruments are listed over here. As I mentioned earlier, all of our helicopters are jet turbine engines. They work at very high operating temperatures and very high pressures. So it's critical to monitor these instruments on a pretty regular basis. You want to glance at these instruments. They're very, very reliable. We have very few problems with them, but it's very important to keep an eye on them because when we're flying around that helicopter, that engine's over 700 degrees Fahrenheit when we're out flying around. It's a very hot, and again, we've got high transmission and hydraulic pressures that we need to monitor, all those things. All the controls are hydraulically boosted in most of these helicopters, and those hydraulics make a big deal. If we lose the hydraulics inside this helicopter, it's very difficult to land. You can do it when we practice landing without the hydraulics, but it's a fight all the way to the ground, and it looks pretty ugly. I look like I don't know how to fly at all if I try and land with no hydraulics. I'm kind of all over the place coming in to land, but it's hard to fly with no hydraulics. But those are all the primary engine instruments for oil pressures and temperatures, transmission, temperatures and pressures. All those instruments are over here on the left side of the instrument panel. And then the flight controls, which you just went over, the cyclic, collective, and anti-torque pedals. We've got GPS and radios here in the center console. Starting up here is the police radio. There's 4 or 5 different radios inside this one box. So we can listen to 4 or 5 different police channels and police departments. We've got audio panels, digital recorders, and then another audio panel. We've got the aviation radios down here and the GPSs. That's a Garmin 530 for you guys who are familiar with some basic avionics. There's a Garmin 530 down there. These are Chelton flight displays over here. So we've got some Garmin radios, and we've got a lot more Garmin radios in our other aircraft. We've got a G500 set up in one of our helicopters. We have the G1000 in our airplane. So we're very familiar with the Garmin products, and we like them. They're very reliable. Over on the left side, on the TFO side, we've got this big high definition display, which will display the moving map when we're on our way to a call. It displays the FLIR image. So when we're using that camera up on the nose, it'll display the FLIR picture and the color picture as well. There's a keyboard, as I mentioned, down here that we can pull out to type in addresses and information. The controller up there on the top. There's a low jack receiver. Low jack was a technology that was very popular about 10, 15 years ago. If you went and bought a new car, you could have a low jack receiver installed, excuse me. And if your car were ever stolen, the company could activate that receiver and it sends out a signal, and then we pick it up with this low jack receiver. So we could fly around and hunt for stolen cars. It's becoming less and less popular because now that most cars have a GPS receiver built into them, they can broadcast and locate a vehicle using that GPS equipment. In fact, a lot of new cars have the OnStar system in them. OnStar can actually shut the car off when it's driving down the road. So if someone steals your parents' car and it has OnStar in it, they can actually remotely turn the car off. And sometimes we'll do that. We'll get behind or we'll get overhead of the bad guy. We'll find the car, and they shut it off and they jump out and run. We can just follow them and catch them. But that way we don't have to get into a vehicle pursuit and they don't drive crazy and hurt somebody out on the road, which unfortunately happens quite a bit with these guys, these bad guys. Here's all the law enforcement and fire radios that we have. Again, a digital recorder. We record everything that we do for evidence. So here's a good close-up picture of all of our aircraft. That's Chase 1. It's a Bell 407. That helicopter was manufactured in 1997, the first year that Bell made the 407. In fact, this is one of the first 30 407s ever built, and it's in service with us at the Sheriff's Office. This is one of the very first 407s that was ever built. And I was told many years ago it was the very first 407 that went into civil service or law enforcement use. So it's pretty unique. It's one of the very first 407s ever built. And it was one of the first ones, if not the first one, that became a police helicopter right here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And then that was in 1997. Then about 10 years later, in 2007, we got another Bell 407. And this one's Chase 2, also a Bell 407. Chase 2 is really unique. It's got something really cool I'm going to tell you about in just a second here as we wrap things up. Chase 3 is a Bell 206 L4. You might have noticed, let me just go back one picture. It's kind of hard to see here, but this 407 has a 4-blade rotor system. You can kind of see one there, one here, one there, one there. So there's 4 rotor blades overhead, right? There's the tail rotor we were talking about earlier, but it's got 4 blades on the rotor system. The L4 only has 2 blades. It's got one going forward and one going backwards. So it's a little bit smaller. It doesn't create as much lift. It's got a smaller engine. It only makes about, I think, 475 shaft horsepower, something like that. So it's not quite as big and capable. In this helicopter, the 407, we can do SWAT training and SWAT insertions. We actually have platforms that go on the outside here on the air stair, and we put 2 SWAT guys on each side of the helicopter, on the left side and then over on the right side. And they ride on the outside of the helicopter with all their gear, their helmet, their rifle, their backpack, all their gear, their ammunition. And then we have 1 SWAT guy inside the helicopter in the back. So there's 5 SWAT guys and 2 of us up front. So we put 7 people in this helicopter when we're doing SWAT missions. Unfortunately, this helicopter just doesn't have the lift capability. It's not quite strong enough to do that kind of stuff, but we do it with the 407. And then finally, our airplane. That's our call sign is Air 1. As I mentioned earlier, it's a Cessna 206 Turbo Stationair. There's the camera on the back of the airplane. Other than that camera and this big window that we put in it, it's a pretty standard Cessna 206. Now, there were 4 seats in the back. In the factory, we took out those 4 seats and we put just 1 seat in, and it's on a round platform that spins around and around, because the TFO in the back can look at there's 2 high definition monitors mounted right here in the pillar. There's a whole radio stack back behind the seat, so that TFO can move their seat position around to work on the radios or look at the flight display, or depending on what they're doing at the moving map, whatever. But that's how the airplane works. So pilot up front and TFO in the back, or we can even have 2 pilots, pilot and co-pilot up front. So that's our airplane. Again, that's a 206 Stationair. This airplane, just to go over some numbers with you guys, the cost of the helicopter. Aviation is a very expensive proposition. It really is. It takes a lot of money to own an airplane. I own an airplane actually outside of the Sheriff's Office that I fly and maintain, and it's a lot of work and it's very expensive, but it's affordable. And if you share your airplane, I have a partner in my airplane, it makes it really affordable. It's a great way to do it. Or being a member of a flight club, that's a great way to get into flying and to experience flying for all you guys who are working on ratings and trying to figure out how you can do aviation and afford it. That's a great way to get started, is to join a flight club. But the airplane costs us somewhere in the ballpark of around $125 to $150 per hour to fly. The helicopter costs us in the ballpark of about $800 an hour to fly. So there's a huge cost savings by flying the airplane when we can versus the helicopter. And the maintenance is so much simpler and easier on the airplane. that helicopter has a lot of moving parts and they're all trying to beat themselves to death and come apart and all that. The airplane is not like that at all. The airplane is much smoother and there's a lot less moving parts. So although those turbine engines in the helicopters are much more reliable, generally speaking, they're much more expensive and there's a lot more maintenance that goes on. But that's the cost difference, around $150 an hour to fly that airplane versus $800 an hour to fly the helicopter. So it's a big difference. And a lot of times people ask, why do we fly the airplane versus the helicopter? Well, that's one of the main reasons, is because of the expense. If we can use the airplane in a given mission, we will try and do it because it's a whole lot less expensive. Here's our operation, our hangar. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're located at the Orlando Executive Airport. We're 7 miles due north of the Orlando International Airport, and we're 3 miles east of downtown Orlando. So any of you guys who live here in Orlando, if you ever want to come by and see us, you're welcome to come by. We're in the phone book. You can Google us. You can give us a call and stop by. We're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never close. You can come by and see us sometime. You can take some pictures. I'll be glad to give you a tour of the aircraft and show you around. And for any of you guys that are in other parts of the country and out of the country, anytime you come to Orlando, you come to visit Disney World or SeaWorld, you can call us up and I'll be glad to give you a tour too and show you around, okay? I mentioned Chase 2 is a very special helicopter, and here's what I was talking about. This is the tail, the horizontal tail stabilizer of Chase 2. This helicopter is dedicated to every deputy sheriff here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office who was killed in the line of duty, or we call it made the ultimate sacrifice. So unfortunately, we've had 21 deputies killed in the line of duty over our 150 plus years as a sheriff's office, starting with our very first sheriff. I know it's hard to see, but the first name up there is David Mizell. Sheriff Mizell was the very first sheriff here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office back in the 1850s. And he was actually killed by some cattle rustlers. He was hung when he was trying to chase down some cattle rustlers. But his name is on there. And since then, all the other 21 deputies killed in the line of duty have their names on that helicopter. Let me go back one. We got permission from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Museum up in Washington, D.C. to put their logo on our helicopter. That's their logo right there. So when we bought this helicopter back in 2007 and we were having it outfitted and painted, we had this logo put on, and we started with about 15 names. Unfortunately, we've added several more names since in the 13 or 14 years we've had this helicopter. We've had several deputies killed, and here they all are. My old partner right down here, Deputy Pilot Craig Heber, my old partner, Craig, was killed in the line of duty. His death was a line of duty death back in 2010. So I actually used to fly in this helicopter. I was the co-pilot, the TFO. Craig was the pilot. So it's really special to me because I actually fly around in the helicopter with his name on it. And but it just stands as a living memorial and a tribute to all of our deputies and police officers killed in the line of duty. So I want to thank you guys for being here and listening and paying attention. I know it's kind of it's a long presentation, but thank you very much for being here. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have if we have a few minutes left. And thank you for allowing me to come and spend a little bit of time with you guys this morning. Please don't ever hesitate to ask for some help or some assistance as you're, following your interest in aviation. If you see a police officer, a deputy sheriff that's involved in law enforcement aviation, we'd love to answer questions and explain to you guys what we do. Don't ever hesitate to come talk to us and ask questions. We'll be happy to talk to you and share the gift that we've been given with you guys. So thank you for letting me be here and talk to you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Officer Sampsel. There are lots in the chat of thank you for your service. Someone pointed out that today's National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day.
All right.
And if I had said thank you from everybody for your service, I think just about every single person on the call is. So I just want to start out with that. So we do have a bunch of questions. Our format is we put them in the chat and I ask them. So the first one is from Keaton in Tennessee. He says, do you ever work with Florida Fish and Game?
Yeah, we do. The FWC, we call them FWC here, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. Yes, they do have their own aviation unit here, but they don't search for bad guys so much. They do game counts and things like that. So if an FWC officer gets into trouble out in the woods or needs some backup or some support, yes. It's not common. We don't do it every day. We don't even do it every month. But there are many times throughout the year where we do work with FWC, and I know many of their officers and many of their pilots, yes.
Great. Our next question comes from Colin in Pennsylvania. It's how many years of service do you have to give? I'm not sure.
I'll answer that a couple ways. So
Okay.
me personally, I went through the police academy back in 1999, and I started with the sheriff's office in 2000. So I'm in my 21st year with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. So that's me personally. But generally speaking, you've got to get into our aviation unit and really any specialty unit in law enforcement. So if you want to work on the SWAT team or in aviation or be a detective, you've got to work a minimum of 2 years, sometimes 3 years. For us in aviation, it's 3 years, but you've got to work a minimum of 2 or 3 years as a police officer or a deputy sheriff out on the street before you can leave patrol and come into a special unit like aviation.
Great. And let's see, we got a few more. Matthew from Illinois asks, have you ever been in a car chase?
Hey, Matthew. Yeah, I was in a car chase last night, in fact. Unfortunately, we're in car chases almost every day, and they're very dangerous. We don't chase an awful lot of bad guys that run from us because they are so dangerous, and we don't want innocent people to get hurt and killed. I have a wife and a son. I have a 5-year-old. If they're out there driving around and the bad guy were to slam into them, I don't know what I'd do. So I always think about that when we get in these car chases. They're very dangerous, and people do get hurt. So we really only get in car chases when it's really, really very serious, maybe a murder suspect or someone who's tried to hurt a deputy or a police officer, something like that. But unfortunately, yes, they do happen. And, you know, several times we're involved in several car chases every month, probably dozens every single month. Yes.
A lot. Keeps you guys busy. Lewis from Puerto Rico is asking, how far is your campus from Lake Mary, Florida?
Hey, Lewis, we are not too far from Lake Mary. We're about 10 to 12 miles due south of Lake Mary. So Lake Mary is about, I'd say 10 or 12 miles north of downtown Orlando. So we're about 15, 20 minutes from Lake Mary.
And we have a similar question from Logan out in Winter Garden, Florida. He's asking, how far are you from Winter Garden?
Hey, Logan, we're just on the other side of downtown. So you're on the west side of downtown. We're on the east side. So it's only about a 4-minute flight. But if I have to drive to Winter Garden, it's about 20 minutes.
Awesome. Let's see. We've got Nathan from Ohio asked, does the air support unit get involved in sting operations?
Hey, Nathan, go Buckeyes. I'll be watching Monday night. I'm a Buckeye from Ohio myself. Yes, we do get involved in sting operations. As I mentioned early on, if our SWAT team or our narcotics team is working or those units are working a special investigation, we assist them on a very consistent, regular basis. So, yep, we do that kind of stuff too.
Awesome. Let's see. Next question comes from Washington. James. Oh, it's moving too fast. Hold on. What's a typical chase like?
Well, generally speaking, we get behind a car that they don't try and they don't try and initiate a traffic stop, turn the lights and sirens until we get overhead if they can wait, because then when the bad guys run, the police cars don't actually have to chase them. They can turn off their lights and back off, and then we just follow the bad guys. So when the lights and sirens go off, generally speaking, the bad guys slow down. They don't keep driving crazy. They're not endangering everybody. So then we follow them, and oftentimes they don't even know that we're there up in the air. We don't put the light on them. We're just kind of following them quietly, and they'll drive and drive and drive, and they'll usually stop pretty quickly. They don't usually go more than about 10 or 15 minutes because they don't want other police to find them in that car. So we'll usually follow them for 10 or 15 minutes. They'll park. When they get out, they'll hear the helicopter or see us. Then they realize, oh no, the cops are still here, and they take off running on foot. And that's great. That's what we want, because then we move in with all the police on the ground. We set that perimeter. We build that box around them. The canine shows up. The dog tracks them on the ground. We're watching them with the FLIR camera, and we bring everything together, and then we catch them. And sometimes they get bit by one of our dogs, our German Shepherds, and that's no fun at all either. But if they're bad guys and they're going to do bad things and commit crimes, they're going to pay a price. That's what happens oftentimes. So those dogs are there for safety, and they're a great tool. We work with our canines every single day, but that's very typical. We get behind a car. We light it up with the lights and sirens to try and stop it. They run. We turn off the lights and sirens. We follow them in the helicopter until they stop or they land somewhere. And then they get out of their car and they run on foot, and we track them down and take them to jail.
Uh-oh.
I got you. I can hear you.
I think we missed that. Oh, now you can. Okay, good. Charlie from Ohio is asking, how many car chases do you have a year?
Oh, geez, Charlie, a lot. Hundreds, a lot.
Let's see. Our next question comes from Jake from Florida. He goes, you mentioned that the department recently retired multiple military surplus aircraft. What kinds were they?
Hey, Jake. So we were flying Vietnam training era helicopters. They were also Bell helicopters. All of our helicopters that we currently have are manufactured by Bell. The retired helicopters were also Bell. They were military surplus OH-58. You can Google OH-58 and you can see them. Sometimes they're called the Kiowa or something similar, but they're very close. They're very close in resemblance to our current helicopters, just smaller. 2-blade rotor system, smaller engine, smaller back seat compartment, but also a Bell helicopter that looked similar. No air conditioning, didn't have doors on them. So they were all built in the 60s and 70s. They were very old helicopters. They were actually used to train pilots that were going to Vietnam to fly. We got them all from Fort Rucker up in Alabama. We flew them back here to Orlando. And I mentioned to you that a brand new helicopter today costs $6 million. We got those helicopters from the Army for $500 each. We paid $500 a piece for those helicopters. Now we had to spend about a couple $100,000 after we got them to make them work for what we needed, but we got them for $500 a piece.
Wow. Our next question comes from Illinois, from Ender. How many criminals do you catch a day?
Hey, Ender. Well, you know, it varies day by day. Some days are busier than others, but there's really not a day goes by that we don't catch a criminal. Every once in a while, but on average, we fly 8 to 10 hours per 24-hour period. So we fly quite a bit, and you generally catch a criminal on at least half of our flights. So we probably average 2 or 3 a day, but some days we might get 6 or 8 or 10, and some days we may get none or 1, but it probably averages out to 2 or 3 or 4 every single day, I would say.
Great. Let's see. Our next question is from Ryan in Ohio. Do you have to communicate with air traffic control at the airport?
Hey, Ryan, that's a great question. Yes, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're in a very, very busy airspace environment here in Orlando. But one thing that if you're not a pilot or you're not too familiar with it, I don't know your background, but for everybody in the call, their airspace is made to be easy and to work in the pilot's favor. So until you get really, really close to an airport, and a big airport like here at Orlando International, there's a 5-mile circle around the airport. If I'm more than 5 miles away from the airport, I really don't have to talk to them as long as I stay below a certain altitude. That's usually around 1,600 or 2,000 feet. So as long as I'm below that altitude and more than 5 miles away, I actually don't have to talk to them. And at our airport, at the Orlando Executive Airport, our tower closes at night. So it's open from 7 in the morning till 6 in the evening. So after 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night, when I take off and land, there's nobody to talk to. I just make general announcements to any other pilots in the area, but the tower's closed. And a lot of people don't know this, but about 95% of the airports in the United States of America do not have a control tower. An awful lot of pilots learn to fly in uncontrolled airspace at an uncontrolled airport. So flying around the tower is common because a lot of us live in cities. But if you go out to the middle of the country, you go out to Nebraska and Kansas and Colorado and Wyoming, there's an awful lot of airports that don't have a tower at all. And pilots are used to flying with no tower. We're used to just talking to each other when we're flying on the radio. That's a great question. But we only have to talk to the tower when we're within certain airspace. And that brings up another point. I didn't mention this, but my normal altitude when I'm flying in the daytime is around 800 feet. And at nighttime, I go up a little bit higher to about 1,000 for a little extra safety margin there.
I'm available
So
tonight or
when I'm
tomorrow.
flying,
She's
I
gonna keep
generally
it to the
sleep
95
under
max that I got
the
for her.
airspace for
She has to do
anybody
inventory
out there, and I
too.
don't have to talk to
They're
a
gonna come over.
All right, great, wonderful. As a reminder, keep your mics muted. Let's see, the next one comes from Nathan in Ohio. Does your
Altair?
Any questions?
county police cars have Star Trek?
Hey, Altair?
Yeah.
Yeah, before you do that, Ben Coleman just checked on, and he's going to make just a brief statement about the meeting on the 23rd. He's up in Atlanta now, I think, Ben, aren't you?
Turn it up, son.
Ben, unmute your mic. Ben, unmute your mic. There you go. Now try it.
Frozen. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm up in a place called Carrollton, Georgia. We do a lot of heavy maintenance rebuilds, and I just came in from outside. It's chilly, and it's good to join you. And what can I say, Obie?
Just that he's going to be our host on the 23rd for the Plane Time show.
Yep. How about a backdrop of a PT6 behind me on a King Air 200?
There you go. Looks good, Ben.
Yeah, the 23rd, we're going to be talking with a guy by the name of Richard Porter, Porter Radials. He's the only R985 repair station in the nation. And it's a lot of good information will come out of it, particularly anybody involved with aviation maintenance.
Okay.
Any questions, Obie?
And the other person you're going to be talking with that same day is the principal over at CFCA. And they're going to, Ben and Lori are going to be welcoming you to the show. So make sure you turn on a few minutes early. It will not be a Zoom format. It will be a broadcast format. And Altair, we can go back to you and the questions now. I just wanted Ben, he's on a little bit of a break now up in Atlanta. Just wanted to say hello to everybody.
Awesome, great, we can't.
Well, and hello, everyone. And you call me anytime. I'll drop whatever I'm doing for you guys.
Aw.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
Back to you, Altair.
All right, let's see where we at. Oh, Nathan from Ohio was asking, does your county police cars have Star Trek in them?
Oh, yeah, Nathan, I'm not sure what that is, so I'm going to go with no. I've never heard of that. Now we have something called Star Chase. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to maybe, but I've never heard of Star Trek. I'm not, other than the TV show and the movies, but we do have a system called Star Chase. And what that is it's a small little device. It's a GPS tracking device that's got this hot sticky glue. So if we get behind a bad guy, we can actually press a button in the police car and it shoots it out and it sticks to the back of the bad guy's car. And if they take off and run from us, we can track it on the computer or in the air from the helicopter without actually chasing it. So that Star Chase tracker lets us follow a bad guy without actually chasing them. Wherever they go, we can follow them via GPS. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Let's see, we've got a few more here. Ethan from California is asking, how do you create a perimeter?
Hey, Ethan, that's a good question. And I do some perimeter training. I teach at the police academy, and I teach all the new deputies that come to work at the sheriff's office, and I teach a whole class on perimeter. So sometime we could do that whole class. But what's the most important thing about a perimeter is getting to the scene as quickly and safely as possible. So when a call comes out on the police radio of a crime that's happened, let's say a burglary, someone's broken into a house, we send about 6 or 8 units to that burglary scene as quickly as we can with their lights and sirens on. They get there as fast as possible, and they basically build a box. So if, let's just assume that my screen is the box, and where my nose is the center, it's where the burglary occurred. We want to put a unit up in the 4 corners, top and bottom, maybe on the sides. We basically want to build a box around that scene, and we don't want it to be too small. We make it fairly big, several blocks, 4 or 5 or 6 blocks wide. And all those police turn on their lights. They might have their sirens on. So whichever direction the bad guy is running, he or she is going to hear or see a police car. They're not going to know which way to go, and they're going to hopefully just stop. and then the helicopter's flying in that big box overhead, and the dog is on the ground tracking inside that box. So it's a big coordinated effort, but that's basically how we set a perimeter and catch bad guys.
Great, awesome. Our next question is from James in Washington. It says, do you miss out on family events? And what's your favorite part of your job?
Hey, James. Yeah, in fact, it's funny because this Christmas I had to get up about 4:30 in the morning and go to work, and I didn't get home till about 6:30. And I have a 5-year-old, Wyatt. So Wyatt had to wait till Dad got home at 6 o'clock at night. We had dinner. He opened his Christmas presents about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So yes, there are some sacrifices, and it happens. It's just sort of the life of public servants. So if you're in the military, if you're a policeman, a fireman, that kind of doctor, a lot of that kind of stuff's going to happen. But it's part of the job. And I understood that going into it. And I'm glad that I am given the opportunity to go out and help people. And the best part of my job is that, and please don't tell anybody this, let's just keep this our little secret here in the Zoom call, is that I would probably do my job for free. They probably wouldn't even have to pay me. Please don't let that get out, because they pay me pretty good to do what I do. But I would probably do my job for free. I get paid to go show up and fly around in a helicopter all day long and all night long. And it's pretty cool. So that's the best part. I own an airplane, as I mentioned. So anytime I go fly my airplane, I have to pay to fly it. Anytime my airplane needs maintenance done, I have to do the maintenance, or I have to pay a mechanic to do the maintenance. When I go to the sheriff's office, I just walk out and get in the thing and go fly. And I don't have to pay for the gas. I don't have to do anything. Just do the training and be safe. So the best part is I get to go out and fly, and I get to help some people. We get to I'd say the best part is that every once in a while, I really get to put a bad guy in jail, somebody who's out hurting people, who's doing bad things. And that's the best part, when I get to chase down a bad guy and put them in jail where they belong, because they're out hurting people like us and your families. So that's probably the best part of my job, actually.
Great. And Ender from Illinois is asking, is this what you wanted to do when you were younger?
Hey, Ender, no, you know what? I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I'll tell you what, and that's a great question, because it does sort of tie into what you guys are all doing. When I was a little kid in Ohio involved in scouting, I remember we took a field trip to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton. And I remember walking around, seeing the rockets and seeing the airplanes and thinking how cool that was. And I loved aviation when I was a kid. My dad was actually in the Air Force. He wasn't a pilot, but I remember some talk about Air Force things. And then later, when I was a little bit older, we moved to Atlanta, and all of my best friends' dads in Atlanta, they all worked for the airlines. They were all captains with the airlines. So when I'd be over at their house playing or having dinner or whatever, I was always hearing about aviation and flying in the airlines. And I'd take trips with them, go up to their lake houses on the weekends, whatever it was. And I heard a lot about aviation. So from a young age, from the time I was in scouting, like most of you guys are, I was interested in aviation. I don't think we had any aviation badges back then. Maybe we did, but I don't remember that. But I was always intrigued by it. I would always look up and see airplanes and helicopters and think how cool that is. And also, I flew a bunch. Starting when I was about 6 years old, I would fly from up north down to Florida, because unfortunately my parents had divorced, but my dad was here in Florida. My mom was up north. They would fly me back and forth. They'd put me on an airplane. So at 6 years old, I was flying 7, 8, 9, 10, my whole growing up. I was flying on an airplane, and I loved it. So I've been around aviation really my whole life. And, but I had an interest in the beginning. I never thought about being a police officer in the beginning. In fact, I was on my way to law school when I got sidetracked with this whole police thing. But as soon as I started working for the sheriff's office, and I knew they had an aviation division, I started bumming rides. I was a cop working out on the street, and on Friday or Saturday night, if I wasn't busy, I'd go over to the airport and jump in the back of the helicopter and just go ride around. So since I became a deputy sheriff, yes, I always wanted to do it. But prior to that, when I was growing up, I always had an interest in aviation. I didn't even really know about police aviation until I got much older. So
Great. Randy from Pennsylvania asked, did you ever fly the little AH-6 Little Bird?
Hey, Randy, no, I did not. Unfortunately, I've been around them. I've seen them. I've sat in them, but I have never actually flown the Little Bird. Nope. But they are very cool.
Let's see. Our next question comes from Nathan in Ohio. Since you're always VFR, do you ever speak to Orlando Center?
Hey, Nathan. Yeah, there are times when I have to get into the international airspace, and every once in a while, I'm normally just talking to approach control. but in the local area. But that's part of the center, the TRACON. And then every once in a while, I'll take a flight. Like I've flown the sheriff up to Tallahassee. The state capital here in Florida is Tallahassee. That's where the governor is. So from time to time, I've flown the sheriff or the police chief from Orlando, like up to Tallahassee. And on those longer flights, I definitely get into the airspace system and talk to approach, departure, center controllers, all those folks. So yes.
Awesome.
Here's my little future pilot. Here's Wyatt, my 5-year-old. He just came in to say hi. You want to say hi to everybody, Wyatt?
Hi.
And Wyatt's done a lot of flying with me. Wyatt actually flew a Bell 407 helicopter when he was 2 years old. I managed a helicopter for an arms dealer, a Bell 407, and Wyatt sat on his mom's lap in the helicopter and flew it at 2 years old. I taught him how to work the controls, and he took the controls and flew it, and I shot a little video of him flying. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Let's see. Our next question is from Logan in Florida. Do you ever jump out of planes?
Hey, Logan. Yes, I have jumped out of an airplane, and I absolutely love it. Even before I was a pilot, I was skydiving. And when you guys get the opportunity, I don't know, your parents might not like this, but I would strongly encourage you try it when you're old enough, because it's one of the most, it's the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. Yes. If done safely and done properly and with training. But yes, I've done quite a bit of skydiving. I got certified about 20 years ago, and I absolutely love it. I haven't done any jumps in it's been a while, but and never out of a helicopter, only out of an airplane. But here in Florida, again, we have a very busy flight training environment. We have one of the busiest skydiving environments anywhere in the world here in Zephyr Hills and in DeLand, Florida, over near Daytona Beach. The DeLand Airport has one of the biggest skydiving schools in the country. In fact, some of the biggest world records for skydiving were set right here in DeLand. That's where I did all my jumps. But yep, I love skydiving. I do.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Nikolai in Washington. What education degrees or education in general do you need to be in your profession?
Well, you know what? There are actually police officers that don't have a college degree. I do myself. I went to college. In fact, I wanted to go to Embry-Riddle, which is an aeronautical university here in Daytona Beach. I ended up going to a local college here in Winter Park called Rollins College instead. And my focus was not on aviation. Like I mentioned earlier, I was actually kind of on my way to law school. So my degree was pre-law and an emphasis in English. But anything, you know, I'm a big supporter of STEM, that curriculum. And I think focusing on engineering and math and those things is always going to benefit you. It's going to benefit you in life in general, but especially in aerospace aviation. Those are going to be things that science technology field is always going to benefit you. So, you know, it's not a requirement to have a college degree to do what I do. It's not a requirement to have a college degree to become a pilot. In fact, I would encourage any of you guys who want to become pilots, start now. No matter what age you are, start training now. Start watching videos, start reading books, start educating yourself, learn as much as you can, be involved in what you guys are involved in, Young Eagles, Civil Air Patrol, things like that. It's never too early to start learning. The FAA may say you have to be a certain age to get a license and get a rating, but you can always start training and learning now. So I would encourage that. And most of you guys can set yourself up so that when you turn whatever age for whatever rating is, whenever you turn 15 or 16, whatever age it is, you can go take your check ride and be flying pretty much on your birthday, or right? Or some of you can be flying before you're driving, actually. So I would recommend that you study all that. But that certain curriculum that's designed around, you know, technology, engineering, math, that stuff is going to benefit you the most. But I was never real good at math. I was always worried that when I decided to become a pilot, that was going to hurt me, that I didn't have a strong math background. And I was okay. I was able to learn it, and I do fine with my math level of skills. So you can do it. You know, don't think because if your math isn't really strong or you struggle a little bit with math, that doesn't mean you can't be a pilot. You just got to work a little extra hard. But I would encourage you guys to do it, and don't give up either. It is a process. It takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight. But as long as you're motivated and you set a goal, you can reach that goal. You just got to stick with it and don't give up. Just keep going, and you will get there. I didn't think I was going to get there, and I never thought I'd get it. When I decided I wanted to fly for the sheriff's office, I was like, this will never happen. It takes 10, 15 years to get a pilot job at the sheriff's office. I was able to do it. I got to it, and I've been doing it for over 15. I've been flying in our aviation for 17 years now. So you can do it. You just got to work hard at it.
Awesome. Our next question, we got a couple questions about chases. Apparently those are pretty popular. Ivana from Arizona, do you also do rescues or only chases?
No, we do. And I'm glad you asked that because that's an important part of what we do. Unfortunately, we deal with a lot of bad guys. That's the business I'm in. I'm in the bad guy business, but we do help people too. And we do some rescues. Now, out in Arizona, you've got mountainous areas and they do a lot more rescue stuff out west than what we do in Florida because our biggest mountain is Mount Dora and it's about 300 feet tall. We don't have much of a mountain range here in Florida, but we do have a lot of woods. We do have a ton of water. So I've done water rescues, boat rescues, people that have gotten lost in boats and canoes and kayaks, things like that. We have a lot of people that will go hiking and get lost in the woods and it gets cold and dark. So whether you're in the mountains or even on flat ground, when it gets cold and dark and you're lost and hungry, it gets scary. So yes, we have done rescues. I've gone out and found people at night in the dark, landed the helicopter, put them in the back and flown them back to safety where their car was parked or back for medical treatment to meet the fire department. So we've done all that stuff in the past. We do rescues, yes.
Awesome. And Madeline from Washington would like to know what's the biggest chase you've ever been in?
Hey, Madeline. I don't know. I would say probably the most serious chase, a couple chases that come to mind is I've chased some bad guys from here in Orlando to other parts of the state, like to Tampa. And they were very big car chases, lots of car crashes and things like that, like you'd see in a movie, in a Hollywood movie. Unfortunately, these are real chases where people are getting hurt and things are getting damaged and kids and parents, like you guys can all get hurt. So it's not real. It's pretty scary. But one of the most serious ones that I can remember was many years ago, a state trooper was shot and killed down in Sebring, Florida. This is about 10 or 15 years ago. And there was a bad guy on the run for days and days. And they asked for help from other aviation units around the state. So I went down there with my partner and I actually found that guy hiding in the woods and we caught him. So he had killed a cop and we chased that guy for a couple of days, but that was probably one of the most serious ones. And one of the ones I was, proudest to be a part of because that's a real bad guy and he needed to go to prison and he did. So.
Our next question is from Nathan in Ohio. It says, did your air unit help escort the SpaceX astronauts to the launch pad?
No, we didn't do that, Nathan. Believe it or not, Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center have their own aviation unit. They do their own aviation security. They have their own SWAT team. They have a couple of Hueys they fly around, do their own training. So they do all their own escorts and all their own aviation work there at the Cape themselves. So we don't get involved to help them, but I watch it on TV probably like you did, and it's pretty cool.
Our next question is from Sadie in Washington. This is with the dogs, have they ever had to ride in a helicopter?
Hey, Sadie. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question too. We, I've had the dogs in the helicopter. We do it more for training purposes. So when we have a brand new canine out that comes to work at the sheriff's office, and we have about 30 canines, we have a really big canine unit here in Orange County. But when we do have new dogs, I always do training around the dogs. The dogs will be out on the ground and I'll fly the helicopter in and I'll hover all around them, like just 10, 20 feet off the ground, make a lot of noise. It's real windy. So they get used to it. And then we'll put the dogs inside the helicopter with the handler and with a muzzle on because I don't want to get bit by the dog and I don't want them to get scared and bite me. But so yes, we do put the dogs inside the helicopter, but we don't fly them to the calls on a regular basis because the canine handlers have big SUVs. They've got big Chevy Tahoes. They've got a crate built into the vehicle. And so they drive and the dogs are in the patrol cars going from scene to scene. But it has happened on time to time. There are other departments that do fly their dogs on a regular basis, and we have trained for it just in case it were to come up. If we need to get the dog in a very remote area, like out in the woods in a swampy area, I could definitely do it. It would be no problem. But we don't do it on any kind of regular basis. But we do train for it, so we are prepared.
Awesome. Connor from Pennsylvania wanted to know if you are an Eagle Scout.
I am not. I was in scouting. I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout. I did not get my Eagle Scout, but I know for a fact that my sheriff, John Mina, is an Eagle Scout. And I know that one of our pilots, his name is Charles Cantrell, and Charles is actually on his way to work right now. He'll be at work in about 30 minutes. Charles is an Eagle Scout, so I work with an Eagle Scout, and he's one of my best friends. And Charles is a great guy and has a great background in scouting. And actually, Charles became a pilot when he was 16 years old. So for any of you guys out there who are thinking about it, you can do it. And he ended up as a law enforcement pilot too. And he did not go in the military. He did it all on his own on the civilian side of things. So if you want to go in the military and fly, that's awesome. Go do it. But doesn't mean you have to. It's not the only option for flying.
Awesome. Great. Our next question is from Mason in Missouri and is, have you ever been in an actual fight?
Hey, Mason. Yes, I have. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I was a deputy sheriff out on the street for many, many years before I got into aviation. And unfortunately, I worked midnights in a very violent, high crime area. And yes, I got in fights, and I've had people try to hurt me. And I even had a guy try to take my gun out of my holster one time in a really bad fight. And then I've worked security. So a lot of police will work extra jobs like at a bank or direct traffic. And I worked at a bar, at a college bar for many, many years. And unfortunately, I got in some skirmishes there. But yes, I have been in a few fights, but I'm getting kind of old now. I'm getting too old and too fat to be fighting people, all that crazy stuff. So I don't do too much of that anymore. But yes, it has happened in the past, and it probably happens to most police officers. Yes.
Awesome. So at 12:14, I put up, please no more questions so we can end on time, but there was one that came in afterwards, which is actually a question I have, and that answers one of our questions for our merit badge. It's from Connor in Pennsylvania. It says, what advice would you give someone looking into aviation as a career?
Well, I'll tell you guys, the most important thing is to start your training right now. I mean, literally this afternoon, you can start your training there. You guys have a tool that I didn't have. So I'm in my 50s now, but when I was your age, when I was a kid and a teenager, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have online courses and training. So you guys have probably just about the best tool in the world, the internet. There is so much knowledge that you can gain by going online, watching videos, enrolling in classes, and starting to study and comprehend and understand now. You can educate and train yourself almost all the way through a rating completely online. It's amazing. And with simulators and things that you can do so much at home and on your own. So I would recommend, even so, money's not an excuse. If you don't have the money right now, maybe to go out and fly an airplane, you can learn an awful lot about flying an airplane online by subscribing to videos and aviation channels and being involved with Florida Aviation Network like you guys are. Obie does a lot of training and videos and education. So there's so many tools and resources and assets out there. Take advantage of everything that we're doing right now on the computer. There's so much out there. But when you get involved with things like Civil Air Patrol and Young Eagles, there are going to be opportunities. And there are folks like me. There are a lot of folks just like me. There are men and women out there that own an airplane that love to share the gift of aviation. So if I know, and I offer this to people all the time, if I know someone that wants to learn to fly, I am happy to take them out and take them flying, introduce them to flying. And there are an awful lot of people in aviation that will share that gift with you. You'll find some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. And the most solid, just well-rounded people are pilots. They're people that love aviation, interested in aviation. And you get around those people, they will share it with you. They'll educate you. They'll work with you. They'll train you. It's amazing how much pilots want to give and give back. So it sounds kind of crazy, but if you go to the airport and you start meeting people and you start, talking to people, people will help you. People will want to help you and will encourage you. But start today. Start right now. Obie is a great leader and a great guide to help you guys on your path to doing this. But you can go on the internet, you can get on the computer and start watching videos. I do it. When I'm at work, I watch videos on helicopter flight training and helicopter emergency procedures. I've been a pilot for 20 years now. I still go on, and you never stop learning, you never stop training. So I do that exactly. I still go online to learn and watch videos if I'm not flying or if I'm on a long trip or something. So never stop learning, and there's so many opportunities out there. You just got to take advantage of them.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation today and the amazing answers to the questions. If you scroll through the chat, there's a lot of appreciation and thank yous in there. There's a couple more questions, but most of them, I'm sorry, we just didn't get a chance to get to all of them. But anyway, so
I'll tell you what, Alta, I don't mind giving out my email address. And if
Okay.
anybody has a question and they want to email it to me, I'd be happy to answer it later. Or, going forward, I'd be happy to give you guys my email address.
Awesome. I actually have some communication going out a little bit later today for
Okay.
everybody.
Okay.
I can put that,
Yeah,
definitely put that in there.
Yeah, Obie has it. So I'll tell you what, if any of you guys want to get in touch with me or have another question, feel free to get my email address from Obie. It's real easy. It's my first name, period, last name, scott.samsel@ocfl.net, but Obie has it. He can give you my email address, and it may take me a little while to get back to you, but I'm working all night tonight and all night tomorrow night, so I'll have some free time between flights, and I will be glad to respond to your questions and answer anything that we didn't get a chance to answer today, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will send that out with my communication and a little bit later on as well.
Awesome.
So everybody, thank you so much for being on our call today. I will be sending out an email with the link for the foam glider plane and just some general information as well for the merit badge. If you guys have any questions, my email address is out there for you, aviationforscouts@gmail.com. And next week, we will be meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Got some exciting things to discuss on that call as well. Obie, do you have anything else?
No, just remember when we do the plane time broadcast, just go to Florida Aviation Network, and over there on the left-hand side, it says view live program. You click that, and then it's just like watching television. But if you've got questions, Alta is going to give you an address to send the questions to then, and it will be similar to what we're doing today with the questions and answers, and Ben and Lori will answer the questions at the end of the broadcast.
All right. So everybody, thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Scott. Did great.
Thank
Bye,
you,
thank
bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
And have a great
Have a
weekend.
great
Thank you.
time. I learned a lot today.